The month you were born isn't just a date on the calendar. It holds a hidden code, an inner calling that speaks to your most intimate journey. Carl Jung believed that nothing was random in life, let alone the time when the soul decides to incarnate. What if the universe had whispered exactly when you were supposed to arrive? What if the moment of your birth was a secret password to your mission? Have you ever wondered why you were born in that very month? Why that scenery, that season, that energy? Perhaps, deep down, something in you already felt that there is a greater meaning in all this. A silent but constant purpose that has accompanied you since the first breath of life. This video is an invitation to look beyond the surface. To dive into yourself and listen to what the time of your birth has to say. Here, we'll explore how each month brings with it a unique vibe, and how it shapes your personality, your challenges, your gifts, and most importantly, your soul's path. Get ready, because what you're going to find out now isn't about astrology, it's about destiny. It's about essence. It's about the call that lives quietly within you, until you're ready to listen to it. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to be born to bloom in spring, while others carry an almost ancestral strength reminiscent of the silence of winter? For Carl Jung, none of this was a coincidence. Time, space, the archetypes that surround us, all of this influences the formation of the psyche and the path of the soul. The month in which we are born not only welcomes us, but shapes us, silently, from the first breath. Imagine that the soul, before being born, chooses the exact moment when it will arrive in the world. Like an artist in front of a blank canvas, she analyzes, which season? What energy? What atmosphere? Each month has a unique vibrational identity. January is not just a beginning, it is also introspection and renewal. August is not just heat, it is intensity, fire, and affirmation. December is not just closure, it is ancestry, completion, and wisdom. Being born in a certain month is like receiving a specific seed. And from then on, everything you live will be the soil, the climate, and the light that will make that seed germinate. Some flowers bloom in chaos, others in tranquility. But they all have a reason for being born when they were born. Jung called this synchronicity, the meaningful interweaving between events that seem random but actually obey an invisible order. For him, symbols, dreams, dates, and natural cycles carry messages from the collective unconscious, a deep layer of the human soul where we are all connected. That is why, even without knowing it, many people feel an affinity with the month in which they were born. As if there was something familiar there, something that echoes internally. The month of your birth is like a portal. It introduces you to a specific emotional landscape. Some people are born in times of recollection, where the cold of the season invites inner silence. Others are born in times of movement, where heat and light ask for expression and contact. And this is not just climatic influence, but symbolic. Nature and archetypes work together to shape your emotional field. Let's take an example. Those born in March, early autumn, feel the call of transition. It is a soul that carries within itself the gift of dealing with endings and beginnings, with detachment and acceptance. Those born in June, close to the winter solstice, carry with them the energy of recollection, of silent wisdom, of observation. And it's not about limiting people to stereotypes, but about recognizing energetic patterns that cross us. Because when we understand the language of the time in which we were born, we begin to better understand our own impulses, our own emptiness, and our own talents. It is as if the month of birth were a mirror that reveals parts of us that logic has never explained. Do you feel like there's something that has always attracted you to your month? A smell, a color, a sensation? Perhaps this is your personal magnetic field, the place from which your soul began to walk in this world. When we honor that beginning, something inside us begins to reorganize. A reunion, a reconnection. So don't ignore the month you were born. It carries important keys about who you are and where you're going. And more than that, it connects you to the sacred time of your essence. By recognizing the vibration of your birth, you begin to decipher the language of your soul. Perhaps you came into the world in a month of storms, and you carry the gift of rebuilding. Perhaps he was born under a calm sky and came to teach peace. But be that as it may, The moment you arrived on Earth was carefully chosen by a part of you that knew exactly what it needed to evolve. His month of birth was not a coincidence. He was a calling. And you answered. The month you were born left marks inside you. Marks that often cannot be seen, but felt, as if they carried the memory of a pact made even before you arrived here. And these marks, invisible to the eye, are like silent trails that the soul follows throughout life. Carl Jung spoke of the existence of unconscious forces that shape our paths. And one of these forces is this hidden trace, the call of the soul that is inscribed in time and accompanies us in silence. You may not remember the exact moment you were born, but your body does. Your psyche remembers. There are sensations that repeat themselves, cycles that are renewed every year in the same month, emotions that come back and we don't know how to explain. This is not just effective memory. This is the language of the soul. And she's trying to tell something that the mind hasn't understood yet. How many times have you felt that a certain period of the year awakens a different strength in you? A longing without a name, a joy that comes from nothing, a restlessness that settles for no reason? It's as if the universe plays the same note in your personal symphony again, and in that instant, you hear the music you heard when you were born. This invisible trail can manifest itself in several ways. For some, it is an impulse to start something new every time in the month of birth. For others, it is a moment of recollection, of crisis, of internal evaluation. Be that as it may, the month of your birth has its own magnetic field, and this field continues to call you even after so many years. He doesn't forget you. And deep down, you haven't forgotten him either. Jung said that there are symbols that are common to all of us. He called them archetypes. And these archetypes are like internal characters that inhabit the psyche: the hero, the mother, the sage, the healer, the shadow. Each month of the year connects with certain archetypes more strongly. For example, being born in May, the month of blooming, can be linked to the archetype of the mother and nutrition. November, with its atmosphere of mystery and depth, can evoke the archetype of shadow and transformation. That's why, when you start looking at your birth month more closely, you also start to see what forces are always trying to emerge within you. Perhaps you have always felt a deep desire to protect others, to care, to welcome. This may be an ancestral calling that is born with you. Or perhaps, on the contrary, you feel the impulse to break structures, bring about change, confront truths. This can also be part of your soul trail. What's more, this trail also connects to your wounds. Yes, because the month in which you were born does not only give gifts, it also points to the challenges that the soul has chosen to live. As if to say, here is your strength, but here is also your proof. Life, after all, is a dance between light and shadow. Jung knew this. He reminded us that what we deny in ourselves doesn't disappear, it just lurks in the shadows. And the month of birth, in its symbolic wisdom, reveals what shadows you need to illuminate. So, stop for a moment and ask yourself, what always comes back to my life this month? Which emotions come up the most? What patterns are repeated? This is the beginning of listening. And listening to the soul requires silence, presence, and courage. Because sometimes she speaks through pain, loss, silence. But always, always with love. The trail of your soul is like an invisible sewing thread, uniting events, meetings, farewells, and dreams. And the thread that guides this line was released in the exact month you were born. It cannot be seen, but it can be felt. When you start following him, you discover that life is not a jumble of chances. It is a story that the soul has written with invisible hands. And no matter how many paths you have taken, how many times you have deviated from yourself, the trail is still there, waiting for your return, hoping you'll look at it with more open eyes. Because the month you were born isn't just a memory, it's a map. And it points to a place where your soul can finally recognize itself. If you feel like there's something else in you, something you don't know how to name yet, maybe it's time to go back to the beginning. To go back to the month where it all began. And to ask, what trace did I leave in myself when I was born? What is my soul trying to show me? Carl Jung said that, those who look outside dream, but those who look inside awaken. May this video and this moment inspire you to look within. Because there, where silence dwells, The trail of your soul is still lit, waiting for you to follow it to the heart of who you really are. Have you ever noticed how the climate of the outside world influences the climate inside you? How does the cloudy skies seem to weigh on the soul? How does a sunny day make you want to start over? Maybe this isn't just about timing, it's about tuning in. Jung told us that there is a deep relationship between the inner world and the outer world. And at birth, we are impregnated by the season that welcomes us. The soul, at this instant, records not only the time of the calendar, but the emotional time of the universe. Seasons aren't just landscapes, they're moods. Summer is expansion, fire, expression. Autumn is detachment, maturation, transition. Winter is recollection, introspection, silence. Spring is rebirth, promise, awakening. And each month of the year fits within one of these seasonal dances. When you are born, you bathe in this field. It is as if the station where you arrived in the world left an emotional imprint on your soul. Think of people who were born in the height of summer. They are often intense, vibrant, full of energy and the will to live. But they can also carry the anxiety of wanting everything at the same time, the fear of stopping, of getting cold. Those born in autumn, on the other hand, usually have a more reflective, poetic soul, with a certain melancholy that makes them profound, but also sensitive to detachment, loss, change. Winter, with its stillness, forges souls that learn from an early age to search within themselves. They are observant, reserved, intuitive. They may seem distant, but it is because they listen more than they speak. Spring, in turn, gives birth to people with a sparkle in their eyes. They are enthusiastic, hopeful, and have a strong connection with the new. However, they may be afraid of the dark, of the breakup, of what is old. Of course, these are not fixed rules, but possible maps. And the most beautiful thing about it is that your birth in a specific season is like an agreement between your soul and nature. Yes, it is in this light, in this climate, and with these colors that I want to begin my journey. And this agreement echoes throughout life. Jung saw the unconscious as a fertile field of symbols. And the seasons, with their cycles, are some of the oldest and most potent symbols of humanity. Nature dies and is reborn every year. Trees lose their leaves so that new ones can emerge. The earth falls asleep in winter to awaken in spring. And our soul does the same, or at least wants to do it. But sometimes we lose that rhythm. We forget that we are part of it, that our body, our emotions, our impulses also obey this invisible cycle. When we move away from nature, we move away from ourselves. But when we look at the month of our birth and reconnect it to the season that welcomed it, something rearranges itself within, a kind of return to the essence. If you were born in September, for example, your soul probably feels an affinity with the end of the harvests, with the idea of balance and maturity. If you came into the world in February, perhaps there is a dreamy, aquatic force in you, like the rivers that flow free after the summer rains. Those born in November can feel a deep call to delve into the invisible, the mystery, what lies behind appearances. And those who came in April can carry the urgency of sprouting, of being born every day anew. Each month, therefore, is like an emotional capsule, shaped not only by dates, but by atmospheres. And his soul, by choosing that month to come into the world, absorbed this field. That's why there are months when we feel more alive. It's as if that season is our emotional home. Because, in a way, it is. There is a very special moment that happens every year, the month of our birthday. For some people, this is a period of expansion and joy. For others, it is a moment of silent crisis, of internal discomfort. This happens because, in this month, the emotions of birth are activated. The sky, the climate, the colors, everything vibrates again as in that instant when the soul touched matter for the first time. It's like a reminder, a chance to start over, or to remember who you are. The invitation here is not to memorize fixed meanings of each season, but to observe. How do I feel when I go back to the month in which I was born? Awakens in me? What does my soul want to tell me at this time? What messages does time send me year after year when I return to the beginning of my journey? Carl Jung would say that this is reconnecting with the self, the center of the psyche, the totality of being. Because birth is not just biological. It is symbolic. And if the beginning is sacred, returning to it is too. Your birth month is not a random number. It's an internal landscape, an emotional portal, an energetic frequency that has accompanied you since the beginning. Looking at the stations that welcomed you is also a way of taking care of yourself. To understand why you feel the way you feel. To accept your phases with more kindness. Because, just like nature, you also have moments to flourish and to gather. Of expanding and silencing. And that's not weakness, it's ancient wisdom. If you listen carefully, you will realize the station that welcomed you still lives in you. She sings a silent song every year, in the same month, waiting for you to stop, breathe, and listen. Because that's where his true rhythm lives. And when you start living in tune with it, life stops being a race. It becomes a dance. There are voices that whisper inside us since we were born. Voices that do not scream, but also do not remain silent. They are there, like echoes of another time, asking to be heard. Carl Jung called this the call of the self, that deep part of us that knows who we are, even when we get lost. And often, this call begins to manifest exactly from the moment we are born. The month in which you came into the world carries an energetic frequency. But more than that, it activates specific archetypes that start moving in your psyche from day one. These archetypes function as internal compasses. They are living symbols that guide your journey, even when you don't realize it. And throughout life, they manifest themselves in the form of intuitions, desires, conflicts, and dreams. But most of us silence those voices. From a young age, we learn to follow rules, expectations, models that often have nothing to do with our essence. And the farther we get away from what we are, the louder the call screams, even if it keeps whispering. It appears in the form of constant dissatisfaction, crises that we cannot explain, a void that no achievement fills. And often, all of this begins to emerge with force in the month we are born. Have you noticed how some cycle turns bring concerns that are difficult to name? As if something in you is trying to remember what you forgot? The anniversary, for Jung, was not just a chronological milestone, but the symbolic turning point. A moment when the layers of the unconscious move and reveal ancient truths, truths that have always been there, but that we can only hear when we are ready. The calls that do not remain silent are exactly that, insistence from your deepest being, trying to put you back on the path that was traced even before you were born. And the most impressive thing is that they adapt. If you don't listen one way, they appear another. First as restlessness, then as discomfort, and sometimes as rupture. The soul is not content to be ignored for too long. These calls can reveal themselves in many ways. A sudden desire to change your life, an interest that has always accompanied you, but that you never had the courage to follow, an emotional pain that insists on returning even after so many attempts at healing. These are all manifestations of a deep desire for alignment. And when we look at the month of our birth, we can more easily identify what those callings are. For example, someone born in December, a month marked by closures and introspection, may feel from an early age the need to understand the cycles of life, to delve into existential themes, to seek wisdom. If that person ignores this call and lives a shallow life, something in him will start screaming. Someone who is born in April, a month of new beginnings and explosions of life, can carry within themselves a powerful creative force, an impulse for action, of constant birth. But if it is pruned, if it is conditioned to fear and paralysis, it will live in internal conflict, feeling that something inside it is always trying to break the bonds. Jung warned us about the dangers of repression. Everything that is not lived, everything that is denied, comes back as a shadow. And the calls of the soul, when ignored for too long, become symptoms: anxiety, apathy, anger, sadness. Because the soul was not made for silence. It was made for expression. And the month of birth is the first chord of this song. Therefore, listening to the call that dwells in you is an act of courage. It often means swimming against the tide, disappointing expectations, rebuilding paths. But it also means finally feeling peace. A peace that does not come from outside, but from within. The peace of being at home, within yourself. And it doesn't take great rituals to listen to what your soul says. All it takes is silence, presence and truth. Start by observing what themes always come back in your life. What kind of experiences are repeated, especially near your birth month? What dreams insist on appearing? These are all clues. Messages that, when deciphered, can change the course of your story. When you honor the month you were born, you're not just celebrating a birthday, you're reconnecting with the beginning of your path. And this beginning carries a sacred force. It contains the reminder of why you chose to be here. Because yes, Jung believed that the soul chooses. He chooses the time, the place, the experiences he needs to live to evolve. And when you respond to calls that won't shut up, something extraordinary happens. You fall in line. And in this alignment, life ceases to be a burden and becomes a dance. The signs appear, the meetings make sense, the path opens. Because finally, you are where you should be, at the center of yourself. If there is a calling that lives in you, even if it doesn't have a name yet, listen to it. He is not there by chance. He is the memory of what you came to do in this world. And perhaps the first step to truly hearing him is to go back to the time when he began to whisper, the month in which his soul arrived on earth. To change, for the soul, is never simply to change shape. It is a process of return, to remember who you really are. Carl Jung said that the process of individuation, the deepest path of the psyche, is the reunion with the essential being. And at the center of this reunion is the memory of what has always lived within you from the first moment. The instant your soul entered this world, in the month you were born. Most people believe that transformation is becoming something new. But under the gaze of the soul, to transform oneself is the opposite. It is to return to being what one has always been, before all the masks, fears, and wounds. It is to dig up what has been buried by the demands of the world. It is to find the thread that was thrown back there at your birth, and that continues to wait for you to hold it. The month you were born is like a fingerprint of the spirit. It holds the tone of your energy, the kind of lesson you came to learn, the kind of love you need to offer. It's the beginning of your melody, and everything that comes after, pain, joy, loss, encounter, are parts of that song trying to find its original rhythm. But on the path of life, we forget. We forget what really moves us. We forget what moves us, of what calls us. We get lost in voices that are not ours. And when this happens, the soul begins to send reminders, through feelings, signs, repetitions, all saying, "Do you still remember who you are?" The memory of the soul is not in words, it is in sensations. It's in that chill when you hear a song that you don't know why it moves you. It is in that desire to change everything suddenly, without rational reason. It is in that silence that welcomes you when you are alone, and you feel a presence within you. And it is, mainly, in its time of origin, the month in which you came into the world. That is why many profound transformations happen as we approach our birthday. Because it is as if the layers of the soul are opened, as if inner doors are opening wide for you to look at yourself. Some feel like isolating themselves. Others want to start over. Still others cry without knowing why. These are all expressions of the soul trying to reorganize itself, trying to remember who it is. Jung taught us that, throughout life, we build an ego, an identity shaped by the world. But behind this ego, there is the self, the totality of being, the divine spark, the core where the truth of who we are dwells. To transform oneself, therefore, is to cross this ego. It is to let it crack, if necessary, so that the light of the self can shine. And the starting point for this journey is in the recognition of where it all began. Returning to your birth month with awareness is more than a reflection. It is a rite of passage. It's like lighting a candle on the altar of your origin and saying, "I remember. I remember what my soul dreamed before I incarnated. I remember what moves me. I remember my truth." And at that moment, the transformation begins. Because real change does not come from outside. It does not come from courses, formulas, empty promises. It comes from diving, of facing what has been forgotten, from the embrace of what still lives inside you, waiting to be recognized. The soul doesn't want you to be perfect, it wants you to be whole. When you look at the month you were born as a symbol, you activate that memory. He begins to realize that there are cycles that always repeat themselves. There are feelings that come back. There are pains that have an older origin than you imagined. And above all, there are talents that were dormant, waiting for the right moment to flourish. It doesn't matter how old you are. It is always time to come back to yourself. It is always time to listen to the calls. It is always time to remember. The soul does not grow old, it matures. And often, to mature is to rediscover the inner child you were the moment you were born. Whole, alive, connected to the mystery. Transforming yourself, then, is not about seeking something new. It's about having the courage to recognize what already inhabits you. It is to drop what no longer serves. It is to make peace with your origin. It is understanding that the month you were born was the beginning of the journey, but not the end. He is a map, a starting point, a constant reminder that your existence has meaning, and your soul, a destiny. Carl Jung wrote that we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but rather by making darkness conscious. Therefore, the month of your birth also shows you where the shadow acts, where you need to dive, where there are parts of yourself waiting to be brought to light. And in doing so, you don't just transform, you remember. He remembers that he was born with a purpose. Remember that he has a mission. He remembers that he carries within himself a strength greater than any challenge. He remembers that his soul knows the way, and always has. So don't underestimate the power of going back to the beginning, to consciously touch the month in which you arrived here. Because there lives a key, and it can open doors that you didn't even know existed inside you. To transform oneself is to remember. And remembering is, deep down, the greatest act of love we can live with ourselves.